All right, so today we're diving deep into A Tree Grows in Brooklyn.
Oh, this is going to be good.
It is, yeah.
I love this book.
It's one of those books I think that really sticks with you.
Definitely.
And we're transported back to early 20th century Williamsburg, Brooklyn, with Francie Nolan.
Yeah, and what's so compelling about this book is it's more than just like a backdrop, Brooklyn itself.
Yeah.
It becomes like a character
Totally.
in Francie's life. It really shapes her experiences and her struggles, her dreams, her resilience. Like how much of who we become is shaped by where we come from.
Right, right. It makes you think about, like, can we ever really leave our past behind?
Right.
Or does it always stay with us in some way?
Yeah, definitely. And you see that so clearly in Francie's story. I mean, right from the get-go, you're thrown into this world of poverty, right? Like they're saving pennies.
Right.
In a milk can. They're cutting open a milk can to use as a little bank.
It's like, talk about a stark contrast, right? To the way a lot of us,
Oh, absolutely.
experience the world today. Just that level of poverty.
Yeah.
Where every penny counts like that.
It makes you really reconsider what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And like even, you think about something like Christmas, it's this big, to some people extravagant holiday, and her and her brother going out and like trying to find scraps of wood to even like assemble some semblance of a tree,
It's just a completely different world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Francie, right away, she's so observant, so curious, and she has to act so much older than she is. I mean, she's 15 at home, but 17 at work,
Right.
She's having to like kind of create this false identity to make a living.
And it's like this weird thing that happens, I think, where like, you're forced into this like almost adulthood, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like before you're ready. And it's so interesting because I feel like that's something that still resonates today.
Oh, absolutely.
Like there's so much pressure on kids to like grow up so fast.
Yeah.
And do all these things that like back then, like, Francie's doing out of necessity, right?
Right.
But now it's like, it's almost like this weird pressure.
Yeah. It's like you're not cool if you're not like, doing all these grown-up things, but you're still a kid.
It's such a weird dynamic.
It is, yeah. It's like this weird in-between.
Yeah. Well, and then on top of all of that, you've got, her father, Johnny.
Right.
Who, is described as like this really charismatic guy.
He is. He's got such a big personality.
But also battling like, his own demons,
Yeah.
And alcoholism, really.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because you see how much Francie adores him, especially at the beginning. She's blinded by love for him, He's this larger-than-life figure. He tells stories. He brings these moments of joy. But as she grows, so does her understanding of what his alcoholism is doing to the family.
Right. And it's not even just the alcoholism. Like, there's this constant undercurrent of violence that's, like, kind of permeating their world, too,
Yeah, and it's like Smith doesn't shy away from that. I mean, think about that scene where Francie sees that. Disturbing act. It, like, completely shatters any kind of romanticized idea of childhood innocence.
Right. Exactly.
And it forces Francie and us as readers to confront, like, the very real dangers of their world.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, I mean, I think is where, like, you see her resilience start to, like, really kind of shine through. Right?
Absolutely. She could easily just give in to despair, but she doesn't. She finds ways to cope, ways to, like, grab hold of hope in the midst of all this darkness. And that's something we can all relate to, I think. Life throws curveballs. It throws us challenges we never saw coming. And it's about finding those inner reserves to keep going.
Yeah, it really is. And I love how, like, Smith shows that resilience can take many forms. Like, there's the practical kind, right? Like Katie, Francie's mom, she works tirelessly to just, like, keep a roof over their heads.
Right.
Keep them fed.
Absolutely, yeah. She's got this quiet strength that's just incredible.
Yeah. And then you've got, like, the emotional resilience, right?
Yeah.
The ability to escape, to find solace in your imagination.
Exactly.
Like those pennies, right? Her prized possession, those gilded pennies. Too precious to spend.
They're symbolic, aren't they?
Yeah.
They represent this, like, hope for a brighter future, even when surrounded by so much hardship.
And it's not just the pennies.
Right.
It's like she escapes into stories.
Yes. Her grandmother's fairy tales, her own love for reading, going to the theater, it all provides this, like, escape
Yeah.
from the harsh realities of her daily life.
Yeah.
And I think that's something a lot of us can relate to. Like, finding refuge in stories. And
Sure.
and it's not just escapism, it's how Francie makes sense of the world. It's how she finds her voice,
Right.
And ultimately, it plants the seeds of her own ambition to become a writer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like, in a world where she doesn't have a lot of control.
exactly.
She finds that through storytelling.
Yes, and that desire for knowledge, too.
Yes.
I mean, she goes to these schools that are more about discipline than nurturing, but she still finds solace in learning. She's hungry for it.
Yeah. It's like and that scene where she comes across, like, it's almost like this, like, little utopia, right? Like, she stumbles on this different neighborhood.
Right.
And it's so different from her own, and it awakens something in her, this, like, yearning
Yes.
to, like, for something more.
It's like a glimpse of what her life could be like.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And education becomes her path to get there.
Yes, absolutely.
A way to break free from the cycle of poverty that's all around her.
It's true. It's like she recognizes that education is power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's her ticket to a different life.
Yeah. And, speaking of her journey and education being her way out, it's tested at every turn. Right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
she's forced to work,
Right.
doing these jobs that most kids her age, I mean, they wouldn't even, imagine doing.
Right.
Washing dishes, covering wires in a factory. It's,
Yeah.
it's rough stuff.
Yeah.
But each job, as difficult as they are, they sort of become these building blocks,
Right.
in her development. It's like Smith's putting her through the ringer on purpose,
Oh, right.
to kind of hone her resilience, her resourcefulness.
It's interesting because, like, I feel like we often think about resilience as this like grand singular act.
Right.
But for her, it's just like woven into her every day. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It
So,
does.
in the way she juggles work and school and deals with, difficult social situations and even like prejudice and things like that.
It's not about overcoming this one big hurdle. It's like this constant process,
Right.
adapting, learning, finding that strength to just keep going,
Right.
even when things are tough.
Right.
And I think that's something we can all, relate to in our own lives. It's those little,
Yeah. It's not always, the big moments, right? It's the little everyday.
yeah, finding those little pockets of joy,
Yeah.
even when things are hard.
Like that box of pennies.
Yeah, exactly. Or even, something as simple as her love for the theater,
Right.
right? It's a way for her to escape the drudgery of her life.
Totally.
It's a space where dreams, become real, where imagination has no limits. And it fuels her own desire to create, to write, to tell those kinds of stories.
Yeah. And then of course, we have this huge loss,
Right.
her father passes away.
And it's not just losing a parent, it's like this loss of innocence for her.
Right.
It's a loss of this, like, even though it was, maybe kind of barely there, but this stability in their family,
Right.
just it all kind of crumbled.
And it's like it forces her to confront some really, like, difficult things, right? Like her own mortality. Like, she's forced to kind of grow up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yet, even in the face of that loss, that incredible loss,
Yeah.
her resilience shines through.
Yeah.
She channels that grief into writing. It's like she finds this solace, this strength
Right.
in the power of words.
It's almost like, even when life is at its worst,
Yeah,
there's meaning to be found.
absolutely.
And a way to, like, process those experiences.
And she's not the only one, right? Yeah, I mean, Katie.
Right.
She's incredible. I mean, she's heartbroken, but she steps up
Yeah.
in these amazing ways. She takes on, like, even more work to support the family, and she's just this pillar of strength for her kids.
She really is, though. I mean, like, and she does it all in this, like, very quiet way,
Yeah, she's just this powerhouse,
Yeah.
She just keeps going.
Yeah. It reminds me of that saying, like, I'll sleep when I'm dead kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. She's like the embodiment of that. She's got to do what she's got to do.
Right. And it makes you think about, you mentioned the family dynamics too, right? Like, even though there is this, like, very clearly, like, deep love,
Oh, yeah.
there's tension too.
Yeah.
Like, think about that part where she lies to her mom about the flowers at graduation.
Oh, such a small detail.
Right.
But it speaks volumes about where Francie's at.
Mhm.
She's starting to test the boundaries.
Right.
She's looking for that independence.
Right. Which, I mean, in a way, that's part of growing up, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's that natural yearning to kind of, you know, break free a little bit, forge your own path, even if it means, leaving behind some of the comforts of home and family.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And you really see that, like, as she enters the workforce, right? Like, each job she takes, it's like exposing her to all these new things, new people, new ideas.
And new possibilities. Like that scene with Miss Armstrong. Remember her?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The college-educated woman,
Yeah.
She represents this path that Francie's drawn to. This life where, knowledge is valued, where you can be your own person.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I imagine back then that was a pretty, that wasn't the norm, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, the expectation for young women back then, it was all about marriage, domesticity.
Right. And you see that, and not just that, but you also see, like, the casual sexism,
Oh, yeah, like that awful incident on the train.
Yeah.
It's just a reminder of what it was like for women back then,
Right.
the things they had to deal with.
It's a good reminder that even though this book takes place, over 100 years ago, a lot of the things she's dealing with, are still unfortunately relevant today.
Yeah, sadly. The fight for equality, the fight for respect.
Yeah, it's still going on.
It's heartbreaking, really. Yeah. And it's in the midst of all that, we see Francie kind of dip her toes into the world of romance with Lee Reinor.
Oh, Lee.
Yes. Whirlwind courtship, their little dance, remember?
Yeah.
Sing Until We Meet Again.
Yeah.
It's just this perfect little capsule of young love, full of hope and uncertainty.
Especially against the backdrop of war,
Exactly. It makes it even more poignant.
Yeah.
And like a lot of first loves, it ends in heartbreak.
Right.
Lee gets married while he's away.
Right.
And it's devastating for Francie, but it also becomes this turning point, I think.
Okay.
It forces her to kind of confront the reality that life doesn't always go as planned.
Right.
And sometimes you have to let go of, what you thought your future would be.
Right.
In order to embrace what's next.
It's like a loss of innocence on kind of like a couple of different levels.
Yes, exactly. It's like this 1-2 punch.
It's almost like that heartbreak, though. Like it's a turning point for her, but not just like romantically, but like with Brooklyn too.
Right.
Like, remember at the beginning she calls it like this magic city.
Yeah.
And it's like by the end, it's almost like that magic has faded.
It's interesting how that happens, right? How our perception of home can change.
Yeah.
As we grow and experience new things.
Yeah.
The places that used to feel so big can start to feel small.
Right. Exactly. And for her, I mean, she never loses sight of going to college.
Never.
Like that's her goal.
That's her dream.
And even through like everything, she's working, she's helping her family. I mean, she's been through so much loss and disappointment, but like she never lets go of that.
It really speaks to her character, doesn't it? That drive, that determination to create a better life for herself. She sees knowledge as the key.
Yeah, it's really, it is inspiring. And she doesn't just like, wish for it to happen.
Right.
She like actively seeks out those opportunity, like those like summer courses she takes.
Oh yeah, cramming in those classes.
All while working like a million hours,
Exactly.
And like I love that scene with Ben Blake.
Yeah.
In the theater.
Oh yes, with the French lessons.
Yes. Yeah.
It's such a great scene.
It's like she sees an opportunity and she like takes it.
She's resourceful.
Yeah.
She's learned how to make things happen for herself.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's a good lesson for all of us, right?
Oh, absolutely. Life's a lot about just, seeing those opportunities and grabbing them.
Totally. And then of course, she makes the decision to leave Brooklyn, which is like, I mean, that's huge, right?
It is. It's bittersweet too. You can tell she's excited, but also scared. I mean, she's leaving everything she knows.
Right. Her whole life.
Her family, her friends, all those streets that made her who she is.
Yeah.
It's a lot to leave behind.
And yet it feels like kind of inevitable,
It does, doesn't it? Like it's the only way forward for her.
Yeah. Like in order for her to really like, become who she's meant to be.
Exactly. It's like she has to break free.
Yeah.
Just like that tree, right? Growing in Brooklyn, pushing up through the concrete, searching for the sun.
It's a great analogy, yeah.
Francie, she's reaching for something more too. A future she can create for herself on her own terms.
It's beautiful, but it's like even though she leaves, she takes Brooklyn with her in a way.
Always.
You know, like it's a part of her.
It's in her resilience, her work ethic, that huge heart of hers. You know, Brooklyn isn't just a place. It's a part of who she is.
So as we kind of like, you know, resurface from this deep dive into Chihiro's in Brooklyn, like what are we left with?
I think for me, it's a story about hope, you know, about the power of the human spirit to overcome even the toughest challenges. Francie's story, it reminds us that no matter what life throws our way, we have the strength within us to keep going, to grow, to create something meaningful.
Yeah, and it reminds us about the power of education too, like how important it is, not just for ourselves, but for future generations.
Absolutely. It's about breaking down those barriers, creating opportunities, you know. It's about empowering ourselves and those who come after us.
Yeah, and it really makes you think about like how the places we come from, how much they shape who we become.
Yeah.
Can we ever really outrun our pasts?
It's the question, isn't it? And maybe the answer is, like Francie, we don't outrun them. We carry those places with us. They become a part of our story.
Yeah. A tree grows in Brooklyn. What a story.
It really is.
It's a story of resilience and hope and you know, love and loss, and it really stays with you.
It does. It's timeless.